Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 57 based on novel. So let's start. At this moment, in a forest, there is an antique and quiet wooden house. The wooden house is surrounded by a thin green fog. Looking from a distance, the whole wooden house is hidden in the mist, vaguely. Combined with the shelter of the woods, the whole forest shows an extremely mysterious atmosphere. Outside the wooden house, the green grass makes it more lively. On one side, the bluestone table paved with natural bluestone, coupled with a few cups of tea floating with light tea fragrance, makes people know that there are people in the seemingly deserted forest. On both sides of the bluestone table, an old man dressed in sackcloth smiled at the corners of his mouth and held a cup of mellow tea. His thin fingertips gently shook the tea in the cup. He looked at the young man in white opposite and said with a smile, "Ready to refine that thing?" Then the old man poured the tea into his mouth and looked at the young man opposite. The latter also smiled faintly when he heard the speech. His white palm slowly poked out, and his soft skin was afraid that even some women would inevitably envy him. The old man was indifferent to it. He was old and wouldn't care about it. He only cared about the future of young men in front of him. The tender fingertip rubbed the ring on his finger. In the old man's eyes full of sigh, the light in his hand flashed, and a green jade like emerald slowly emerged. When the jade appeared, the old man in front of the man was also a pair of turbid old eyes. He looked at the young man with satisfaction in his eyes, nodded and smiled. "Yes, very good. Tianqiu jade essence with more than 3,000 years, with this, you can break through the fight emperor in 2 years. The old man's voice fell, and the young man in front of him nodded slightly. However, the old man frowned again. A pair of turbid old eyes stared at Qiu Jing that day, and asked with a slight suspicion. "But, look at this, there should be Tianqiu demon flowers." "Well, indeed, but it has been refined by the rock owl." The old man's voice falls, and the young man also opens his mouth with a smile. There is no color of dissatisfaction in his eyes. If he is not greedy, he can get more. Otherwise, if his eyes are blocked by petty profits in front of him, he will inevitably fall in the word greed in the future. Hearing this, the old man couldn't help laughing. He played with the teacup in his hand with his fingers and said softly, Hey, this boy is really a master who refuses to suffer." With a chuckle, the old man looked at the young man in front of him, then his eyes slowly turned and looked at the forest full of thin green fog. "Hey, this is just saying, the man will arrive. I don't know what kind of expression he will show when he sees you." The old man's voice fell. In the dense forest, a figure dressed in black robes also stepped out slowly. Qingfeng had left by himself when he was about to arrive here. Therefore, only Xiao Yan came slowly. "Ha, Laro Luo, you've been missing for 2 months. You look even older and stronger, ha." As soon as he appeared, Xiao Yang's slightly teasing words came out of his mouth with a laugh. Laro Luo scolded lightly when he heard the words, glanced his lips and said, "Don't flatter, smelly boy. It's only 2 months. What can I change, old man? It's you. Have you won the champion of the herbalist conference?" Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang smiled, rubbed the tip of his nose, looked at the young man beside Luo, and then opened his mouth and said with a smile, "Hey, old Luo, is there anything you don't know about the wild ancient city?" Cut. Listening to the words, Luo Laro smiled and scolded again. He was too lazy to pay attention. The young man on the side also got up slowly at the moment, looked at him with a light smile, and also looked at his Xiao Yang. "Hihi, brother Yang Xiao, you're all right. I didn't expect to meet you and me at the medicine refining masters meeting. We'll meet again so soon." Ha, indeed, but this just confirms the doubt in my heart. Brother Luo Jin and Laro Luo really have a good relationship. Xiao Yang also smiled lightly. Obviously, he was not surprised by Luo Jin in front of him. In fact, Xiao Yang had doubts as early as 2 months ago. Seeing the indifferent look on Xiao Yang's face, Luo Laro also smiled, while Luo Jin showed a little surprised color on his face. It seems that Xiao Yang in front of him is much more fierce than he imagined. Seeing the look on Luo Jin's face, Xiao Yang smiled again, smiled at Luo Jin and said, "Union Pavilion, as a powerful force that looks at the whole southern region, can be regarded as unknown. When I first saw it, I realized that there were prohibitions imposed by powerful people at the level of fighting emperor in Union Pavilion. When I first saw you in Union Pavilion, the strongest guardian in Union Pavilion was just a Shenlao who was an 8-star and a half emperor. if there are no other strong people, I'm afraid no one will believe it." At this point, Luo Jin could not help but pick his eyebrows. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yang had noticed this since then. "The appearance of old Luo just confirms this for me. The most important thing is that his old man's surname is also Luo." Although Xiao Yang's words were simple, they were understood immediately. Luo Jin had to shrug helplessly. He thought he could surprise Xiao Yang. Unexpectedly, he had guessed for a long time. His appearance today just helped him confirm his thoughts. The three chatted casually again, and Luo Jin didn't tangle too much about this issue. Just chatting, he couldn't help beating around the bush against Xiao Yang. Unlike Luo Laro, he knew Xiao Yang's origin only from a mysterious ruler. He always thought that Xiao Yang should be the son of a mysterious force in the middle region. Otherwise, he would have a high-level fighting skill, and how did Xiao Yang get those magical secrets that only the middle regions have? In the face of these, Xiao Yang doesn't dare to be careless. Don't mention Luo Jin first. At the moment, Luo Laro is not a layman. Of course, Xiao Yang doesn't know that Luo Ao already knows his origin. I don't know what expression Xiao Yang's face will show if Luo Ao speaks out in the future. "Hey, boy, you are now a man of the moment in the wild ancient city. Look at these people, but they are all forces from surrounding cities or families. They are all running for you." Seeing that Luo Jin was still chasing Xiao Yang, Luo Laro couldn't help shaking his head. Then he smiled and interrupted Luo Jin's words that he wanted to continue. At the same time, Luo Laro also waved his big sleeve and an invisible practice. After a burst of wriggling, a light curtain of several feet slowly appeared in front of the three people. At this moment, the scenes in the wild ancient city outside also fell into the eyes of Xiao Yang. Seeing this scene, Luo Jin also thought a little in his heart and took back his mind. His eyes also looked at the huge light curtain in front of him. Xiao Yang looked at the dark heads on the light curtain and said with a bitter smile, "Luo Lao, don't make fun of me. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't hide here." Old Luo couldn't help laughing again when he heard the speech. He didn't expect that the champion of this session of the University of Medicine Refiners would be driven out of nowhere by a group of irrelevant people. It's really ridiculous. In this regard, Xiao Yang had to turn his eyes at the people on the light screen. Luo Jin also grabbed a light smile at the corners of his mouth, glanced at the light screen at will, then looked at Xiao Yang again and said with a smile, "Brother Yang Xiao, now the medicine refining masters meeting is over. I don't know what's your plan next." When it comes to the subject, Xiao Yang's face suddenly turns positive, while Luo Laro looks at the two people in front of him with a smile, and his heart is full of expectations for them. The two young people in front of us can be regarded as the real leaders of the younger generation in the whole mainland today. Luo Jin comes from the central region. Naturally, there is no need to say more about his talent. If you concentrate on cultivation and rely on his ability, as long as you give him enough time, there must be a place for him in the future mainland. As for Xiao Yang, although he is not from the mainland, with his ability and his terrible cultivation talent, Xiao Yang's future achievements may not be lower than those influential children in the middle region. Xiao Yang heard Luo Jin's words and raised his eyebrows slightly. According to his plan, he should have gone directly to the western regions after the medicine refining masters meeting. However, although the medicine refining masters meeting is over, there is another thing that still worries Xiao Yang. Last time, with the help of Luo Lao, I got a Void Thunder Pool post from the ancestor of the Li family. I'm also curious about the so-called Void Thunder Pool. If I have the opportunity this time, I'd like to go in and have a look. By the way, I'll break through my strength to 4-star and half Emperor. Luo Jin nodded slightly when he heard the speech, but he looked at Xiao Yang solemnly and said, "Brother Yang Xiao, don't forget the villain Mo Zhai. He won't give up with his heart. You should be very careful then." Hearing Luo Jin's words, Xiao Yang could not help but frown. He was a little surprised in his eyes. Listening to his words, he didn't seem to intend to enter the empty minefield. Haha, because my skill is special, the power in the void minefield is not suitable for my cultivation, so you are the only one to go to the void minefield this time. It seems that he saw the doubts in Xiao Yang's heart. Luo Jin didn't hide anything and directly told Xiao Yang the reason. Xiao Yang nodded to show that different cultivation methods are indeed different for different skills. For example, Xiao Yang's burning formula, you must use different fire for cultivation, which can't be achieved by other skills. As for Mo Zhai and others, although it is really difficult to deal with, they will not be the only ones entering the void minefield at that time. Jiu Li and Red Phosphorus will also enter. Under the control of them, plus themselves and the North King, they should not be able to turn over any big waves. Who? Now, it's time to refine the origin of that part of the soul. The end of the herbalist meeting made Xiao Yang famous in the wild ancient city, and countless people came to see him. What everyone discussed in the whole wild, whether in the streets or outside the city, was the champion of the herbalist meeting. The terrible herbalist who refined the imperial product Quandan, Rock Owl. The wild ancient city became lively again because of this. The gate of the herbalist guild was crowded by a group of semi-imperialist strongmen. The guild elders were shocked for the first time in many years, but Xiao Yang was no longer in the guild. Even if these people waited any longer, they would never see anyone. In the face of such a situation, Jiu Li and Red Phosphorus are also quite helpless. Xiao Yang has left the guild for several days, but these people have been waiting at the gate of the guild for so many days. Although Jiu Li has also told them that Xiao Yang has left, these guys still have no intention to change. Although some people choose to leave, more, but still think Jiu Li is cheating them. While Jiu Li and others in the outside world are helpless, Xiao Yang is practicing at ease in the spirit world. At the medicine refining masters meeting, Xiao Yang did his best to refine the imperial product all pill. Although the situation looked okay after the game, it was just that Xiao Yang borrowed the power of the pill. There is no lack of imperial elixir in the ring left by Haimu, but the elixir is only a foreign object after all. Although it can support for a while, it can't be completely relied on. When Xiao Yang entered the spirit world, the imperial elixir in his body hasn't been refined. Xiao Yang didn't dare to be idle these days. He hasn't seen the power of imperial elixir, although he has swallowed the imperial elixir, but we must not allow its power to spread wantonly in our own body, otherwise the final result can only be that the gains outweigh the losses. After meeting with Luo and Laro, Xiao Yang was immersed in the imperial elixir in his body. This time, with Xiao Yang's active guidance and refining, Xiao Yang's breath returned to its peak again in just a few days. At this time, Xiao Yang touched the bottleneck that was about to break through again. Even so, Xiao Yang still pressed down the throbbing force in the cyclone in his body. Breakthrough is natural sooner or later. Even if Xiao Yang is willing at the moment, he can make a breakthrough, and he can definitely set foot in the 4-star and half emperor, but what Xiao Yang wants in his heart is not just this result. Although the energy of heaven and earth in the spirit world is quite strong, the effect brought by the breakthrough cannot make Xiao Yang's strength solidify quickly, and the empty thunder pool can definitely do this. The power of violent thunder contained in the void thunder pool can quickly condense the fighting spirit in Xiao Yang's body in the shortest time. In this way, when Xiao Yang breaks through, his power will be completely stable in the 4-star and half emperor, which is also of endless benefit to Xiao Yang's future cultivation. Compared with being eager to break through now, his strength is not stable enough. We might as well wait a little longer. The foundation of strength is the most important. A strong appearance can't be better than anyone. After all, even among the strong at the same level, strength is also strong and weak. For example, Xiao Yang and Mo Zhai are the most striking examples. Who? He exhaled a long breath of turbid qi tightly held in his chest. Xiao Yang slowly withdrew from the cultivation state and felt some tumbling fighting spirit in his body. Xiao Yang couldn't help but frown slightly. This is an omen before the breakthrough that will be very pleasantly surprised to anyone. At the moment, it is the last thing Xiao Yang wants to see. After calming his mind for a while, Xiao Yang slowly pressed down the abnormal state in his body. Then his palm slowly stretched out. The white palm reflected a soft light like warm jade under the sunlight. A lacquer black ring on his finger looked particularly conspicuous at the moment. After taking a deep breath, Xiao Yang's heart moved again. He gently shook his palm, and a flash of light flashed in his palm. Then a thin jade bottle appeared in Xiao Yang's hand. The thing in it was the original power of the soul extracted by Guyo from the green wood. Although the fighting spirit can't be improved for the time being, it's better to focus on the soul power first. With Xiao Yang's soul power now, if you refine and devour the origin of these souls, you may really be comparable to the soul power of the third-order herbalist. Xiao Yang still clearly remembers that Jiu Li once told him that the soul level of a herbalist was divided into human and divine realm when he just entered the nuclear herbalist level of the Herbalist Guild. Now Xiao Yang's soul power is between the human soul and the divine soul, the imperial soul. After the soul of the imperial realm, it is the realm of unity. To reach this realm, we need to completely condense the soul power. Only by condensing into soul beads can we really be regarded as reaching the realm of a third-order herbalist. When the jade bottle was opened, the milky white soul source also floated out slowly. Xiao Yang's palm worked hard, and an invisible force controlled the soul source in Xiao Yang's palm. The faint milky white soul source was like a cloud, constantly churning in Xiao Yang's palm, feeling the familiar smell, and Xiao Yang could not help but frown slightly. A trace of unbearable emotion rose in my heart. The origin of the soul should not have been refined by Xiao Yang. If Yu hadn't done it secretly without Xiao Yang's investigation, Xiao Yang would never have injured Qingmu. Now, the origin of the soul that should have belonged to Qingmu falls into his hands. Speaking of the relationship between Xiao Yang and Luo Lao, he has a reason with the Shenling family. This is what he does now. There is something inhumane in it. Hey, smelly boy, why, I can't bear it now? Why didn't I say it earlier, or I wouldn't have given it back to that Qingmu at that time, ha ha. When Xiao Yang's heart is lost, Guyo doesn't forget to make fun of Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang is helpless. Now Qingmu can't go out. Even if he wants to return it, what can he do? Can he give it to him after he leaves the customs? Moreover, even if Qingmu can come out now, it is absolutely impossible to give it back to him. Knowing that there is such a terrible existence as Guyo in Xiao Yang's body, Qingmu will never take back the origin of the soul. Therefore, from the current point of view, Xiao Yang has to take the source into his pocket as a favor. If he has a chance in the future, Xiao Yang will return it 100 times. Come on, don't think too much. If you really want to help the Shenling family when you have strength in the future, they look good now, but they are just on the mainland border. After all, you see too little. If you really remember this feeling, you should practice hard and become famous in the future, so that the Shenling family can be above board. Entering the central region will not waste the hope that Qingmu has for you. Hearing Jiyu's words, Xiao Yang couldn't help frowning slightly. Jiyu's words obviously had something to say. It seemed that Orochi gave him the origin of his soul, not without a purpose. Jiyu also seemed to see Xiao Yang's question, smiled and said, "You're still an old Jianghu. Do you really think Orochi gave you the source of his soul completely because of me? Although my body is good at different fire, and I was born to control him, I have no reason to do it. The reason why he wants to give you the source of his soul is because he sees your talent. There is not only the spirit of different fire, but also such an anti-heaven terrorist force. It's very worthwhile for him to spend some soul source for the whole Shenling family. Qingmu places the future of the Shenling family on you." In the spirit world, Xiao Yang sat cross-legged on a blue stone, his eyes closed, his mind looked inside, and it seemed that Xiao Yang was practicing. At the moment, his body was surging with terrible soul power like a raging wave. Xiao Yang did not expect that the soul power contained in the soul origin of Qingmu could be so terrible, which is much stronger than Xiao Yang's soul power when refining and swallowing Haimu. Although Haimu was once a strongman of Yuanzong at his peak, after so many years, the soul power has been consumed with the passage of years. There is indeed a gap compared with Qingmu. However, it can be regarded as an unexpected joy for Xiao Yang. Refining Haimu's remnant soul has made Xiao Yang's soul power advance by leaps and bounds. Nowadays, Xiao Yang, relying on his soul power alone, is already comparable to few herbalists at the same level. Now, if he devours these soul origins again, I don't know whether Xiao Yang's soul realm can also take the opportunity to break through at one fell swoop. Calm down. Xiao Yang carefully felt the power of the source of the soul in the cyclone in his body. His heart moved, and a cluster of gorgeous different fire rose from within itself, slowly wrapping the source of the soul. While the source of the soul is wrapped, it seems to be aware of it. It is like a milky white source of the soul, like a cloud that quickly churns under the package of different fire, as if it wants to find a breakthrough between different fire. However, the strange fire completely wrapped it, and there was no fruit for a long time. This group of soul origin had to curl up like a little squirrel. In a moment, the milky white soul source, which had the size of a fist, condensed rapidly in a moment. Although it became smaller, in Xiao Yang's perception, the power in the soul source was also more and more condensed, which made Xiao Yang frown slightly. Sure enough, the cohesion of soul power can make it stronger. Although the appearance is not as good as before, the power contained is far more than before. Oh! No wonder the herbalist condensed such a thing as soul beads. It seems that he condensed the soul power like fighting spirit. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang was not surprised. When he smiled in his heart, he no longer paid too much attention to it. No matter how the source of the soul is condensed, today, it is destined to be refined by Xiao Yang. For a long time, the refining of the soul origin needs to be done carefully. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed quietly. In Xiao Yang's body, the soul origin with the size of a fist was gradually refined, leaving only the size of a pill. At the same time, Xiao Yang's soul power is also more and more powerful. The majestic soul power is like a sea. The turbulent soul waves toss endlessly in Xiao Yang's body. In addition, it is also full of fighting spirit. For a time, Xiao Yang is a little difficult to restrain the more powerful power in his own body. At this time, Xiao Yang frowned. Unexpectedly, the improvement of soul power also attracted the fighting spirit in his body. If it goes on like this again, I'm afraid I don't want to break through today. At the moment, Xiao Yang is like a full balloon, and the most terrible thing is that the balloon is still expanding. Of course, the result of balloon expansion is a bang explosion. Although this result will not make Xiao Yang die, it is not what Xiao Yang wants to see. The way to prevent the balloon from expanding is to release part of the air. Buzz. Suddenly, Xiao Yang's closed eyes, sitting on the bluestone, suddenly opened. At the moment of opening, the fighting spirit in Xiao Yang seemed to have a vent point. Two dazzling fighting light pillars suddenly shot out of Xiao Yang's eyes and disappeared into the void in front of Xiao Yang. When the light column disappeared, Xiao Yang seemed to feel that it was not enough. He looked up to the sky and thought about it. The fighting spirit in the cyclone in his body suddenly roared out like a runaway wild horse, and quickly rushed up Xiao Yang's throat. Then Xiao Yang opened his mouth and shot in all directions. A terrible fighting spirit light column with a width of 100 feet rushed towards the void. Such a terrible momentum naturally startled many people in the spirit world. When those spirit people looked up at the void, they only saw a terrible fighting light column rushing into the sky like a bamboo, shattering the void, and finally sinking into the endless void space. Seeing this scene, some Shinling clansmen with strength in the semi-emperor level could not help feeling surprised. When they were curious to come forward and have a look, a cry came down from the sky and spread like thunder between the heaven and the earth. A group of little rabbits, just cultivate fighting skills. If there's anything good to see, get back. Hearing Luo Laro's voice, although these Shinling people were reluctant, they had to follow it. As for those Shinling people with strong strength, they narrowed their eyes and looked at the magnificent pillar of heaven, thinking a little in their hearts. Above the sky, Luo Laro also looked at the terrible fighting light column in front of him with his eyes slightly narrowed. A pair of turbid old eyes showed a deep color of surprise. This degree of bombardment is nothing to him, but if it is placed at the semi-imperial level, it can be regarded as an extremely terrible existence. Tut tut. This boy, no wonder he can cross the strength of 2 stars and confront the 6-star and half-emperor head-on. The condensation degree of fighting spirit can't be compared with me at that time. At the moment, even Luo Laodu couldn't help exclaiming at Xiao Yang's strength, but Xiao Yang was already immersed in the intense refining again. At the moment, even Luo Laodu couldn't help exclaiming at Xiao Yang's strength, but Xiao Yang was already immersed in the intense refining again. Seeing that the fighting light column in front of him gradually dispersed, Luo turned his eyes to Xiao Yang below. After noticing the majestic fighting spirit in the latter's body, Luo also couldn't help frowning. According to Xiao Yang's situation at the moment, it was obvious that he had reached the edge of breakthrough, but he was stunned to suppress the surging fighting spirit in his body, as if he didn't want to break through. Hey, this boy, he's really a stranger in the cultivation world. Others are looking forward to breaking through all day. Once they touch the barrier that is about to break through, who doesn't fight hard, and you force yourself to suppress the breakthrough. If it gets out, I don't know how many people want to talk to you. When he noticed the situation in Xiao Yang's body at the moment, Luo was a little surprised. However, he soon understood. With Luo's shrewdness, he naturally could see that Xiao Yang was not in a hurry to break through. What he did was to find an excellent place for cultivation, so that his strength could be fully consolidated while breaking through. Needless to say, even if Luo Laodang can think of it, the place of cultivation is naturally a void minefield. Good. However, at present, this boy should be refining the origin of the soul. Hey, he's really a lucky boy. While exploring the turbulent fighting spirit in Xiao Yang's body, the original power of the soul being refined by Xiao Yang is naturally perceived by Luo Lao. However, the almost non-existent breath on it makes him unable to perceive that it is the original power of Qingmu's soul. Time suddenly passed. In a twinkling of an eye, it was 5 days since Xiao Yang began to refine the origin of the soul. Xiao Yang's soul power also soared rapidly at a speed that seems very terrible to ordinary people. Now Xiao Yang's soul power is invincible among the second-class pharmacist. Who? As the last strand of soul source was thoroughly refined and absorbed by Xiao Yang's dark eyes closed for 5 days also opened slowly. At the moment when Xiao Yang's eyes opened, an invisible arrow suddenly shot out of his deep eyes. The invisible force roared out, and the void in front of Xiao Yang twisted in an instant. Then, with a dull bang, an invisible force burst out in front of Xiao Yang like a shell. Where he passed along, the green earth was brought out of a gully several feet deep by his terrible strength. Then, at the next moment, a mountain stone hundreds of feet away from Xiao Yang burst, and stone debris flew in the air. The whole mountain was blasted out of an extremely dangerous crack by this blow. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang is not surprised. The strength of his soul is almost the same as fighting spirit, but it's just a little troublesome to practice. Now, if Xiao Yang's soul power is used in combat, it's afraid that ordinary 3 stars and half emperors can easily face it. Therefore, this movement in front of him is really nothing. Well, yes, your soul power now has reached the later peak of the soul of the Imperial Realm. It's only one step away from the great fullness of the Imperial Realm. This level of soul power is enough for you to sweep other herbalists of the same level. The growth of Xiao Yang's strength also amazed Jiuyu in his body. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yang was not killed by Haimu during his last visit to the spirit world. It was a blessing in disguise. Not only did his strength reach the peak of the later half of the 3-star emperor, but also his soul strength reached the later stage of the Imperial Realm. It was only a step away from the great perfection of the Imperial Realm. This terrible growth rate, even in the heart of Guyo, I couldn't help sighing and exclaiming. In this regard, Xiao Yang's eyes narrowed slightly, and his face changed quietly. The palm under his sleeve robe also slowly clenched, and then slowly opened again. In the depths of his eyes, he flashed a firm look, paused, and whispered. In the later period of Emperor territory, I don't know. If it condenses soul beads, can it succeed? After a short rest, Xiao Yang, who had refined the source of his soul, turned his eyes, calmed his mind, and entered the state of cultivation again. His mind moved. The magnificent soul power like the sea in the middle of his eyebrows also moved at this moment. Aware of the changes in Xiao Yang's body, Guyo can't help but wonder about Xiao Yang's actions. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yang should be so bold. His soul power is just reaching the later stage of the empire. He wants to try to gather soul beads. I really don't know whether he should be said to be reckless or courageous. Although Xiao Yang's strength will be greatly improved after condensing the soul beads, the danger is not that ordinary people can bear. It's the first time in so many years to gather soul beads with the soul power of the late emperor's territory, even with bone quiet experience. Condensing soul beads is easy to say, that is, condensing soul power into a bead, but if it is done, the pressure to bear during the period is definitely not as simple and easy as it sounds. The cohesion of soul beads not only tests the soul power of the herbalist, but also the mind of the herbalist. In the process of cohesion of soul beads, the strong soul power is no longer the dependence of the herbalist. Only the unswerving and tenacious mind is the key to support the cohesion of soul beads to the end. It is precisely because of this that so many second-class senior herbalists have been unable to gather soul beads to break through the barrier and step into the position of third-class herbalists. The soul power can be cultivated and improved, but their own mind can only rely on their own heart. The inner strength can ensure the cohesion of soul beads, and this can be regarded as a test for the strong. After all, who can endure the pain of condensing soul beads and succeed in promotion is not a person with firm mind and strong strength. Calm down, Xiao Yang slowly mobilized the soul power in the sea, and the method of condensing soul beads is not difficult. Although this is the first time, Xiao Yang is also familiar with the control of soul power. As a pharmacist, he is an easy thing. What Xiao Yang needs to do now is to guide the soul power in knowing the sea, and then condense it through special methods. When all the soul power in Xiao Yang's knowing the sea can be completely condensed into an entity state, the soul bead is even completed. With Xiao Yang's mind turning, the soul power as majestic as the sea also surged up in the sea. Then, under Xiao Yang's control, the surging soul power slowly rotated in Xiao Yang's sea. A trace of soul power was gradually extracted from it under Xiao Yang's control, and then it was intertwined with each other like two little snakes. The first step of cohesion is the most relaxed step. It didn't take Xiao Yang too much time. It easily condensed the two clusters of soul forces together, and the next steps are basically the same. However, with the continuous cohesion and compression of soul forces, the soul pressure in the soul bead in front of Xiao Yang also soared rapidly. Before the soul beads are completely condensed and successful, all the soul forces Xiao Yang has will become his biggest burden at the moment. The terrible pressure will crush his mind. If he can't insist, the worst result will hurt Xiao Yang's soul. With the gradual cohesion of soul power, in Xiao Yang's mind, a grey-white bead is also slowly formed under the perfusion of soul power. At this time, Xiao Yang also feels the terrible soul pressure from the soul bead more and more effectively. That kind of pressure is by no means the terrible situation Xiao Yang can achieve in the pass. At this time, Xiao Yang is like carrying a towering Mount Tai. Every part of the whole body is under terrible pressure. His muscles are as tight as iron at the moment, and every cell of the body is struggling with the pressure. With the passage of time, a sense of pain like an ant bites all over Xiao Yang's body. The bones of Xiao Yang's body seem to be about to fall apart. The soul power in knowing the sea is constantly losing and poured into the grey soul bead. Xiao Yang's consciousness is gradually blurred. Before the soul bead is completed, the soul power will no longer be mobilized for him. Usually Xiao Yang can rely on the powerful soul power to keep himself awake, but at this time, he can only rely on his own willpower. In knowing the sea, Xiao Yang's body transformed by virtue of his soul power also gradually drifted away and turned into wisps of soul power and merged into the soul bead. Around Xiao Yang's body, the threat of terror also relied on the soul bead to become more and more terrible. Buzz. Suddenly, the grey-white soul bead that looked the size of a basketball trembled violently. Then, an invisible breath of terror rolled over to Xiao Yang in an instant, and Xiao Yang could not avoid. He knew that if he wanted to successfully condense the soul bead, he must accept the blow, otherwise, all his previous achievements would be wasted. The breath of terror made Xiao Yang's dizzy head wake up in an instant. At this moment, Xiao Yang's heart was also helpless. Unexpectedly, one day he would be crushed by his proud soul. Perhaps, the essence of soul bead condensation is to make the herbalist understand that if you want to defeat others, you must defeat yourself first. For the really strong, the strength of the opponent can only make him more excited and unable to surpass himself, which will make him timid. When Xiao Yang thought of this in his heart, the soul power that originally belonged to Xiao Yang came surging with the terror of crushing everything at the moment. Even if Xiao Yang at his peak tried his best with his soul power, it was difficult to compare with it. When the threat of the soul came to him, even with Xiao Yang's nature, he couldn't help feeling cold. However, before he had any action, the terrible soul force full of destruction was oppressed like a storm. For a moment, Xiao Yang's face suddenly changed, and his illusory body burst. Under the pressure of his terrible soul, he thought his firm will was so vulnerable. The spirit almost collapsed. Xiao Yang was unwilling to make a hoarse roar at the bottom of his heart. The painful blood seemed to gush out of his throat. The feeling that the whole body was crushed made Xiao Yang really feel the breath of death. At this moment, Xiao Yang had suffocated. He felt that his body was no longer obedient and his soul disappeared. He has only a body like a walking corpse. Death has forced his heart. Alas, this boy is so reckless. Hum. With an old sigh, the sound of regret sounded from the bottom of Xiao Yang's heart. Suddenly, a magnificent soul force also poured in madly. The soul pressure released by the soul bead was resisted in a flash. It was in this instant that Xiao Yang's collapsed spirit was revitalized again. Although I can save you for a while, I can't protect you for a lifetime. Next, whether you succeed or not depends on yourself. At the moment when the threat of the soul was resisted, Xiao Yang's spirit was suddenly lifted. Xiao Yang only felt that his body was suddenly light, and all the pressure was removed. When Xiao Yang was surprised at this, the voice of bone quiet words came. When Xiao Yang heard the speech, his heart also immediately reacted. It seems that Guyo helped him just now. If it wasn't Guyo, Xiao Yang couldn't imagine what the ending would be like just now. The heart silently said thanks. Xiao Yang also knew that it was not the time to thank now. Then he put all his spirit on the soul bead in front of him. Next, as long as he could stabilize his original heart and stick to it until the end, the soul bead could become it. Accompanied by another violent tremor of the soul bead, a more terrible soul pressure than the previous times attacked Xiao Yang again. At the moment, Xiao Yang's illusory body is much weaker. In the face of the repeated rolling of the soul bead, Xiao Yang has only the pain to bear, which is a kind of destruction to the spirit. Xiao Yang's ability to persist until now is enough to show that his willpower is beyond ordinary people. As time went by, Xiao Yang, who was crushed again and again, seemed to be numb under the terrible pressure. When the soul pressure hit, Xiao Yang showed an expressionless look and let the pressure crush him. Since you can't resist, just bear it. Take the rolling again and again as honing again and practice in pain. Xiao Yang firmly believes that there will be a moment when the pressure released by the soul bead will be ignored by him. Buzz. Buzz. Soul bead also seemed to notice something wrong with Xiao Yang. In the face of rolling again and again, Xiao Yang no longer resisted tenaciously, but showed an indifferent attitude. The original illusory and transparent body became more and more solid in rolling again and again, and even Xiao Yang's body trembled slightly with the more violent impact of soul coercion. Buzzing. The vibration of the soul bead became more and more violent. A magnificent soul force swept out and crushed Xiao Yang's body again. One wave was not flat, another wave arose, Xiao Yang's broken body was not spliced together, and another terrible soul pressure swept through. Boom. Finally, the vast soul was suddenly shocked, as if it had hit a wall. When I looked at it, a solid white palm was blowing out, blocking the oncoming soul. When the two touched, a more terrible soul storm swept through Xiao Yang's body. Through Xiao Yang's body, the blue stone that made Xiao Yang sit down suddenly turned into a pile of powder. The earth within 100 feet around burst open wide cracks like spider webs. Then, that's it. With a flat voice, Xiao Yang's broken body finally solidified again. At the same time, his right hand, which had not been raised, suddenly clenched into a fist without hesitation. Without the help of fighting spirit or soul power, Xiao Yang blew out a fist and severely bombarded the invisible soul in front of him. 8. Pole. Collapse. With a fierce drink from his soul, Xiao Yang finally broke out completely, but there was no support of fighting spirit, but the power of this fist was more terrible than his fighting spirit at his peak. At the same time, the soul pressure around Xiao Yang was broken, like a hard fist like steel, pounding on the soul pressure in front with a terrible storm like tearing the void. Boom. With one punch, all the power of destruction and decay poured out, and the whole sea space became silent at the moment. Outside, Xiao Yang's body also trembled suddenly. Xiao Yang sat down for several feet, and the ground suddenly collapsed, and a huge pit also appeared. At this moment, the space in front of Xiao Yang seemed to freeze suddenly. The soul bead also had no reaction in an instant, while Xiao Yang suddenly started and grabbed it towards the soul bead. The soul bead seemed to have just returned to consciousness. It had turned into a dark grey soul bead. After a violent shake, a terrible soul threat swept out. At this moment, the soul bead seemed to feel a dangerous breath. I've only heard of soul bead crushing the herbalist. Why was he crushed by the herbalist Xiao Yang today? All normal trajectories seem to turn suddenly here. It's like a train walking on the main road and the plane crossing the subway line. Even, it's the bone in Xiao Yang's body. At the moment, he can't help looking stunned. At the moment, he never thought of such a scene. Boom. 8 pole collapse. However, although the soul pressure released by the soul bead was extremely terrible, Xiao Yang still looked expressionless. He let the soul pressure come to him. Then he clenched his fists and burst out one after another. Bang, bang, bang. 8 pole avalanche. Explosion. One punch at a time, Xiao Yang took 10 steps forward, which was to blow out 10 punches. His steps did not stop at all. When Xiao Yang came to the soul bead, he had blown out an unknown number of punches continuously. Finally, under Xiao Yang's violent drink, Xiao Yang suddenly made a startling explosion sound behind him. Xiao Yang looked at the soul bead in front of him with very flat eyes. Next, as long as he could compress the soul force in the soul bead again until the soul bead was completely condensed, it would be regarded as a real success. Now, the most difficult part has passed. Xiao Yang has almost full confidence in the success of condensing soul beads next. As long as there are no other mistakes in the process, soul beads will be able to condense success. At the thought of the feeling of advanced third-order herbalist, Xiao Yang couldn't help feeling excited. Without hesitation, he immediately sat down and prepared for the next refining process. However, at this time, the old voice of Guyo came quietly. "Boy, are you sure you want to condense the soul beads now? You have to understand that the embryonic form of the soul beads has been formed. Even if you condense the soul beads in the future, it's not too late, but if you are eager to condense the soul beads now, I'm afraid there will be a large failure rate." When Jiyu spoke, Xiao Yang was surprised. Now the rudiment of the soul bead has been formed, and then there is the process of complete condensation. Everything seems to be very smooth. The soul bead is obviously about to succeed. Is there any loophole? Jiyu Lao, what you're saying is, your soul power now is just in the later stage of Emperor territory. Although I have never seen anyone who condensed soul beads in the later stage of Emperor territory, based on my experience, I think the success rate will never exceed 30%. Hearing this, Xiao Yang immediately understood that what Jiyu said was indeed true. Condensing the soul beads with the soul power in the later stage of the empire is like forcibly breaking through the half-emperor with the strength in the early stage of 9-star saint fighting. No matter how terrible your cultivation talent is, the gap caused by power cannot be made up, otherwise, those gifted cultivation wizards who are born will not have to make any efforts the day after tomorrow to dominate the mainland directly. Jiu Yu's words undoubtedly pierced Xiao Yang's heart full of confidence. In this way, the soul bead can only be like this temporarily. After all, even Xiao Yang can't bear the consequences of the failure of soul bead condensation. But on the other hand, Xiao Yang has some expectations in his heart, and even can't wait. The word soul bead is the first relationship Xiao Yang came into contact with in soul power after he came to Yuanwu mainland. He doesn't want to give up easily. If it is really possible to successfully refine soul beads, Xiao Yang will never give up easily even if the success rate is only 30%. After a moment of silence, Xiao Yang nodded with a dignified face. A determined look appeared in his eyes. Then a firm smile appeared at the corners of his mouth and smiled at Jiu Yu at the bottom of his heart. Since Jiu Laro has never seen a person who condenses soul beads with the soul of the late emperor's territory before, let me have a try today. Anyway, I have eaten a lot of crabs, and it's not bad. The big deal is that my soul has been hurt. This video will end here.